The views and opinions expressed on America's Workforce Union podcast and its digital media channels are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of the producers or sponsors.
Welcome to the America's Workforce Radio Podcast, the flagship production of the American Workers Radio and Podcast Network, where organized labor and its never-ending fight to protect the rights of the American worker come first. Now, presented by LIUNA, Laborers International Union of North America. Here's your host, Ed Flash Ferentz.
A big surprise for economists. 23,000 jobs lost in July. The story you did not hear about Taylor Farms. And today on the show, the Transportation Trades Department of the AFL-CIO and the Ohio Labor Federation. Welcome to the Monday, August 10th edition of America's Workforce, where we're available on at least 5 platforms. That includes YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. A lot of different ways you can access America's Workforce, and we do appreciate that. We have 2 guests on the show today. We're going to kick things off with Greg Regan. Greg is the president of the Transportation Trades Department of the AFL-CIO, which is a collection of about 3 dozen unions dealing with transportation. First thing we're going to talk about is a guy named David Cummins, who is the nominee for the Transportation Security Administration. Not a union guy. He has opposed collective bargaining rights for TSA workers. Now, one of the Senate committees, the Health Committee, which deals with labor, advanced his nomination. So he's going to go to the full Senate. And the Transportation Trades Department is urging those on the Senate to vote no. Greg will talk about that. We'll also talk about rail labor and rail reform and the Railroad Retirement Board. This is a crazy story because there's money there for workers who spent their entire life in the rail industry, and they're having problems accessing that money. And also the latest on the Surface Transportation Funding Bill. You may recall the Bipartisan Infrastructure and Job Act allocating a lot of money. Well, apparently every year they have to renew that allocation, and there's a problem there. So Greg's going to run all of that as our first guest. Then we're going to go to Tim Berga. And as you know, this is our countdown to Labor Day. This Labor Day is 132 years in the making. So I asked Tim, president of the Ohio AFL-CIO, to take a look back at Ohio history. And you probably didn't know this, but by the late 19th century, Ohio's coal fields, especially the little cities of black diamonds, as they called them, New Straitsville and Shawnee, Ohio, became a hub for unionization. And how about this? The United Mine Workers of America was actually chartered in Columbus, Ohio in 1890. So we're going to take a look at that and more as part of Labor 132 with Tim Berga as our second guest right here on America's Workforce. Now, a brief look into the world of labor. The segment brought to you by Boyd Watterson Asset Management. We're talking $38 billion of assets under advisement, and you can find more at boydwatterson.com. A summer hiring slump dogged the U.S. labor market in July as the economy unexpectedly lost 23,000 jobs. This according to new data released Friday by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Now, the unemployment rate actually dropped to 4.1%, down from 4.2%. Why? More people just left the labor force. Now, July's job gains marked a sharp slowdown from June, which was downwardly revised to 20,000 from 57,000. Following revisions, the jobs created in May were essentially cut in half, dropping to 66,000 from 129,000. Workers' pay gains slowed to a 5-year low. You know, we've got some problems going on here. Now, economists figured July was going to give us 95,000 jobs, a gain. Instead, we lost 23,000. And the last couple of months, they had to revise those numbers down. Taylor Farms, the produce supplier under scrutiny over the latest cyclospora outbreak, is facing renewed criticism over its use of state prison labor, which could include labor from incarcerated, undocumented individuals. A 2023 report by Prison Legal News found that Taylor Farms was one of several Arizona companies that contracted labor from Arizona's Department of Corrections, Rehabilitation, and Reentry, DCRR, through Arizona's correctional industries. The report counted 26 prisoners with detainers filed by Federal Immigration and Customs Enforcement, better known as ICE. The detainers rendered them ineligible for employment in the U.S., and a state law going back almost 20 years, 2007, makes any potential employer criminally liable for failure to check their work eligibility, though importantly, the law exempts employers renting prison labor from DCRR or its for-profit subsidiary. Now, this means that state law permits the forced labor of prisoners who would otherwise be eligible for work in the state. The resurface reporting highlights how companies can benefit from the Constitution's own exception to its ban on slavery and forced labor in the context of incarcerated people. And in this case, the incarcerated were undocumented. And a lot of people are sick. Some have died as a result of what happened at Taylor Farms. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the president of the Transportation Trades Department of the AFL-CIO.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferens.
It takes LIUNA to power North America with affordable energy. The men and women of LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, have the skills needed to build and maintain oil, natural gas, nuclear, solar, and wind projects that are shaping America's energy future. From new energy tech to retrofitted facilities, LIUNA members do it all. Find out what it takes to be powered by LIUNA at liuna.org. That's liuna.org.
America's Workforce is presented by the Laborers International Union of North America. Feel the power right now at liuna.org. The Heat and Frost Insulators and Allied Workers are proud to be a title sponsor for America's Workforce Radio. The Insulators Union is leading the way in the mechanical insulation industry, fire stopping, and infectious disease control. Regarded as North America's energy conservation specialists, these professionals are known for their professional work and dedication. You can learn more about the Insulators Union at insulators.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Communication Workers of America. You can find more at cwa-union.org. This segment of the show is brought to you by the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. For more information, please visit bmwe.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the United Steelworkers. You can find more at usw.org.
America's Workforce appreciates our sponsor, the Columbus Central Ohio Building and Construction Trades Council, who represents more than 18,000 workers from 19 affiliated local unions and district councils.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferens.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast, AWF Union Podcast. Let's go to Greg Regan right now. Greg is the president of the Transportation Trades Department of the AFL-CIO. Collection of transportation unions, of course, well over 36 of them. ttd.org is a website you want to go to. Greg, welcome back to the show. Thanks for joining us once again. And here we are. We've got somebody who has a lot of power in Washington. We're talking about a nominee. Well, he might have a lot of power. TSA Administrator nominee David Cummins, who does not like unions. You know, we talk on the show so much about the importance of getting worker-friendly politicians in legislatures, in Congress, in the Senate. But in this case, this is someone that's nominated in a very high position. What's going on here, Greg?
Yeah, look, this guy was nominated to be the head of the Transportation Security Administration, TSA, and he openly said that, unions, the ability to collectively bargain inhibits these workers' ability to do their jobs, which is just flat out wrong. It's just false. For every president that's elected, they have the right to nominate who they want for these important jobs. And we have not criticized a lot of the nominees of this administration, but this one, we felt it was important to be able to stand up and say, no, this is the wrong person for this job.
You say, well, he says that somehow collective bargaining agreements inhibit their job. Did he explain that in any detail?
I mean, this is an old argument. This goes back to when TSA was founded under George Bush, where they claim that, the idea that they would have a union would inhibit the ability to protect the public safety and security interests of this country, which is frankly just, everything we know is the exact opposite of that. It creates better morale. To have a collective bargaining agreement. It creates more security, more accountability. And in this case, he believes that they're apparently a harm to national security.
Now, the other part of this is privatization, and I guess he wants to, try this out at some airports. And right now, the government's in control. We're going to see maybe private contractors involved in screening.
There is an existing program called the Screening Partnership Program, where there's a handful of airports across the country that are where security screening is operated by a private company. He wants to dramatically expand that program. So to go from basically 20 airports to 200 airports. And, right now there's 20. There's San Francisco, Rochester, New York, where I'm from, have this private operation. But to expand it would be to go basically back to where we were pre 9/11.
Not a good thing. Not a good thing. I know a lot of people are upset with the TSA, but it's there for a very good reason. All right. Where is he in the process of being confirmed? What do we know about that right now?
He was reported out of the committee in the Senate, so he needs to be voted on by the full Senate. That's the last step.
Well, I would imagine you're doing some lobbying. What are you hearing right now?
I suspect. I mean, he went through the committee, so I suspect he'll get through on a floor vote. But it's important to put people on notice. To make them understand why we are objecting to this person leading this agency. And again, it helps us hold people accountable when we're making clear that this is, he's the bad choice for this reason. And this is what we want to do to try to hold him accountable.
Yeah. Well, frankly, nobody should be surprised about this because this administration has a lot of people just like him that do not like unions. It's very, very sad. All right, let's move to the Railroad Retirement Board. Now, this is a crazy story. And I say it's crazy because it's not about the money. The money is there. The question is accessing the money. Explain that part to me.
The railroad retirement is essentially the world's healthiest pension system, if you think of it that way. And it's paid for by railroaders and their employers. That's where the money comes from. And it gives people access to retirement and disability benefits and unemployment insurance but they're earned benefits, and yet it's administered by the federal government, which means that you have to be able to, the Railroad Retirement Board and their employees need to have the resources to actually administer these benefits. And so we think this bill is great because it's actually going to give them the ability to administer the earned benefits that railroaders have, again, earned.
It sounds like, well, the technology is not up to snuff and also staffing. So is this by design to hold up workers' benefits, in your opinion, or is this something that they just have not updated?
I don't think it's malicious. I think this is just a matter of government falling behind, the work, basically, of what the workers do. It's they haven't updated the law to be able to be up to speed with modern technology, modern needs, the nature of our country. And hopefully this bill will fix it. And the fact that we have, bipartisan support for it is a good thing.
Well, I don't know if it's going to be on the fast track here. Everything runs pretty slow in Congress. Hopefully there'll be some resolve on this before the end of the year. All right, let's move to the Surface Transportation Funding Bill. This is a subject you and I have had many conversations on. And you'll have to explain this one for me. Division J programs, long-term funding for all. What's Division J?
That's just the section of the bill that was done during the infrastructure law, the bipartisan infrastructure law 5 years ago.
All right. So where are we with all of this?
We're kind of on a knife's edge moment here, because this law is going to expire at the end of September. So we're not that far away from that. And when that expires, that's all of our surface transportation programs go. They're done. They're not being funded. That means we're not going to have any roads and bridge programs. We're not going to be sending public transit money. We're not going to be doing passenger rail money for Amtrak or for commuter rail systems. That's been funded under what we call advanced appropriations, which means it's been a bulk 5-year funding. When all that expires, and when our regular appropriations bill expires at the end of September, we're facing a funding cliff for transportation programs in this country. And what we're asking for is to make sure that all of those programs that were funded under the IIJA, under the bipartisan infrastructure law, that they're funded at the levels they are now for the next year, to make sure that it continues going forward. Because we have so many important projects in this country that are being worked on, that are being built. And if we just cut it off, it's going to set us back as a country, and we need to continue all of that.
Well, I remember when that legislation became possible. That was under the Biden administration, the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. Big deal, bipartisan, a lot of money. And if you go around America, you will see that money at work. The crazy thing about this, and they passed these laws, and obviously you got to put money behind these laws. And this is pretty typical, though. I mean, usually when the law matures and, when years go by, obviously they have to keep funding, correct? And are we talking about more funding right now, or is there a fight over that, or what?
Well, yes, there's always a fight over that. But what we're talking about right now, like the interest in our letter is just to say, hey, let's continue what we've been doing. While you guys figure out your own house, while you figure out how to run the government, and fund the government, just continue the funding at the same level that it is right now, because there are too many important things going on.
So, Greg, with all this being said, I mean, it's a highly charged political year, and often in years like this, well, Congress is on recess, they're out campaigning. Do you see anything really being resolved on all of this, or what?
They're talking about a full year continuing resolution for federal appropriations. So I think Congress is also kind of kicking the can down the road. They recognize that everyone wants to be campaigning their districts. They need to go home, all that stuff. At this point, I think people are going to want as frictionless as a process as possible. They don't want to have any big controversies, and they don't want to do anything that will upset the apple cart before they go and get back in the home stretch for campaigning. But it's a matter of willpower. Do they, where are the projects happening? What do they want to do? It's a goofy time, and it's always hard to see which way people are going to go. Do they want to have a big fight right now, or do they want to just let things slide, and then we'll see what happens in December?
Well, hopefully they'll come to their senses on this, because like I said, when you drive around America, there's a lot of construction going on. You don't want to see that come to a halt. I mean, if the money dries up, you hear me?
Yeah, you absolutely don't. And also, I think if you look around the country at for example, the demand on passenger rail. I mean, I was just the president of Amtrak is leaving at the end of this month, and when I just went to his going away party last week, and he went through these numbers, just like the record ridership levels, the record revenue that Amtrak's doing. And all of that is because of the investments that we're putting into it. If you build it, they will come. The fact that we have all of this demand for passenger rail, it's not that people don't want to ride trains. It's not that people don't want to drive. It's that they're only going to do it if there's a viable option available. And that's what we're creating when we're investing in these things. We're creating opportunities for people. We're creating opportunities for people to ride trains and drive on better roads and safe bridges and ride public transit. And if that goes away, then people are like, oh, screw it. I'll just drive my car then, or I'll suck it up.
Yeah.
So it matters to people, and we need to continue to make those investments.
Well said, my man. Greg Regan, president of the Transportation Trades Department of the AFL-CIO ttd.org is a website you want to go to. ttd.org. You take care. We'll talk to you in the next month or so, okay?
Sounds good. Thanks, Flash.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Tim Berga taking a look at Ohio labor history right here on America's Workforce. Don't go away.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferens.
It takes LIUNA to keep America running. Over 70,000 public employees are part of LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, delivering critical services such as healthcare and emergency response, as well as maintaining roads and sanitation systems. Even the National Postal Mail Handlers Union, representing over 47,000 U.S. postal workers, is affiliated with LIUNA. Find out what it takes for LIUNA to keep America running at liuna.org. That's liuna.org.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers. You can find more at ifpte.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Heat and Frost Insulators Labor Management Cooperative Trust. Find out more at insulators.org/LMCT.
America's Workforce Radio is sponsored in part by the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, District Council 6, representing painters, glazers, drywall finishers, and sign and display industry workers. They remind you that belonging to a union is your right as an American.
American workers are sick of struggling to get by. It's time to get ahead. In the Teamsters Union, workers are winning industry-leading contracts, historically high wages, fully paid health care, and retirement benefits you can count on. Across the country, Teamsters fight alongside our brothers and sisters to secure a better life. It's what we've been doing and how we've been living for more than a century. When we fight, we win. Join us. Be a Teamster.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Iron Workers. You can find more at ironworkers.org.
America's Workforce is sponsored in part by Boyd Watterson Asset Management, LLC. Find out more about our investment solutions tailored to meet the needs of Taft-Hartley funds at boydwatterson.com.
There is unity and strength for workers.
We are the USW.
We are the USW.
The United Steelworkers.
The largest industrial union in North America.
We represent 850,000 members in the U.S., Canada, and the Caribbean.
We work in metals,
rubber,
chemicals,
paper,
oil refining,
atomic energy, and the service sector.
We are steelworkers, standing strong and fighting for what's right.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferens.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast, AWF Union Podcast. Well, this is the second week now. We're delving into labor history. Labor 132, we call this. It's the 132nd anniversary of the creation of Labor Day as a national holiday. And we started this off with the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. Right now, let's go to Columbus, Ohio, and join a longtime supporter of America's Workforce on behalf of the Ohio AFL-CIO, ohioaflcio.org. We're talking to the president of the Labor Federation, Tim Berga. And Tim, he shared a story with us, and we're going to delve into the history here in the state of Ohio when it comes to coal and steel and organizing. It's all connected. And Tim has a personal story about his grandpa who nearly escaped death a couple of decades ago. This was back, it was back in the 40s, right, Tim?
Yes, it was March of 1940 when the Willow Grove mine exploded, killing miners in Belmont County. And as you know, Flash, there were a lot of coal mines in eastern Ohio. And many families have ancestors all along the Ohio River and Lake Erie that work industrial jobs, either coal and other industrial jobs. But yeah, my grandfather worked in the mines probably starting in the 1920s. You know, you graduate the 8th grade, then you go into the mines. That's what you did. It wasn't the mines or the steel factories that allowed my family to lift up and rise up out of poverty. It was the unions that they forged and formed in the steel mills and in the coal mines that gave them an opportunity to educate their kids. And, every opportunity I've had in life, I owe to the United Mine Workers of America and the United Steelworkers.
Tim, it's interesting to note that the United Mine Workers of America was actually chartered in Columbus, Ohio, going back to 1890, and the union won the 8-hour workday 8 years later, 1898. When you talk about mining in Ohio, you don't think of that as a profession very much today, because when I think of mining, I think of West Virginia. And West Virginia obviously is a bordering state and all that, but it is a very, very long and rich history of mining in the state of Ohio, and along with that, the organizing component. And also, you have to throw in steel. Now, you come from a steel worker family, Tim. Maybe you could speak to that. I know your dad was very, very involved in the Steelworkers Union.
That's right. That's right. My grandfather, Guido Calavini, and his brothers worked in the mines. My dad's dad, my grandfather, Taylor Berga, worked at Republic Steel in Canton. He bounced around from jobs, but steel was a big part of it. And then my father worked at Republic, and then where he was president of the local there in the 1960s. So like so many Ohioans, you can trace our history back to the industrial economy of steel and coal. And like you say, the United Mine Workers of America was founded in Columbus, Ohio at a meeting in 1890. There's a plaque marking that in the alley next to the Ohio Theater across from the State House on State Street in Columbus. So a lot of history in steel and coal, which then obviously led to our thriving manufacturing and auto sector and all that. But it was the organizing, and the organizing and those that came before us, Flash, they fought for the right to collectively bargain for a better life, and it cost them blood and some their lives. And we owe them a great deal of gratitude for what they did to give us the opportunity that we have today. And coal is certainly not what it was back in the 1890s, that's for sure. But a lot of great leaders came out of that. William Green was the president of the United Mine Workers of America in Ohio. And in 1911, he was elected to the Ohio Senate, where he authored what was called the Workmen's Compensation Law, which is now workers' compensation, still in place today, one of the best run workers' comp organizations, fully government run in the country, and giving workers who are injured or killed on the job the benefits they and their family deserve. So, and William Green went on to become a president of the American Federation of Labor in 1924. So the mine history is deep in Ohio, and we owe a great deal to those that came before us in those very dangerous industrial jobs.
Yes, mining, organizing, labor activism. Let's fast forward to what happened in the state of Ohio 15 years ago. And this garnered national attention because we were not alone. There were various states. It started in Wisconsin when Scott Walker was the governor, and then it would spread over to Michigan. And it was basically an attack on public sector workers. And in Ohio, SB 5. And Tim, let's reflect on what happened 15 years ago, because that was a very, very interesting time in the state.
It was. Let's go back 200 years, okay? 200 years we've been fighting organized labor, fighting the right to come together collectively to bargain for a better life. 200 years, Flash, we've been at this, and the fights continue. The work has changed greatly over that time, but in 2011, as you indicated, Senate Bill 5 was thrust upon Ohioans, even though they weren't looking for it, to take away the collective bargaining rights of public nurses, teachers, firefighters, and 350,000 public servants. Fortunately, Ohio had the right to go to the ballot, collect the signatures to try to overturn a law. And that's exactly what we did 15 years ago with Senate Bill 5. And, interestingly enough, Flash, as I had indicated, organized labor has been fighting the fights for a very long time. And in 1958, when they put right to work on the ballot in Ohio to take away union rights, we went to the ballot and defeated that by the same margin we defeated Senate Bill 5, 62 to 38.
So the bottom line is people don't want right to work in the state of Ohio. Nonetheless, lawmakers still keep introducing it, don't they, Tim?
Well, as I'd indicated, there's always that anti-union sentiment. It may not be large, but it's significant to the point where we always have to be vigilant. And that's the AFL-CIO. And there's so much history, for history. As you had indicated, the AFL was created in 1886 in Ohio, with Samuel Gompers was our first president. And then in 1955, the AFL and the Congress of Industrial Organizations merged. And then in 1958 in Cleveland, Ohio, the AFL-CIO of Ohio was created. So there's so much rich history of organized labor in Ohio. And it's our job to be caretakers of that at the Ohio AFL-CIO and make sure that we have the ability to collectively bargain, make sure that we're not a right-to-work state, make sure we have prevailing wage in our building construction. If it wasn't for the National Labor Relations Act, the Fair Labor Standards Act, Davis-Bacon Act, all those things that happened under Roosevelt's administration going forward, that's what's given us the opportunity to have the life that we have for working-class people. And it's our job to make sure that that continues.
Tim, one more question here before we wrap this up. Young people, very, very interested in unions today. We've seen some pollings, almost 90%, especially those between 18 and 34, primarily male. I'm just wondering, in your opinion, are they also interested in the history of organizing, labor history? I think it's important, and I wish the schools would do a better job on that, but I'm just wondering, how do you feel about young people delving into labor history to find out how we got here?
Public approval of organized labor is high now as it has been since the 1960s, and highest amongst young workers. Young workers want the opportunity to come together to have a voice at the workplace, but they're not real sure how to go about it. As you'd indicated, we've lost a lot of labor history, education in this state. Opportunities like Senate Bill 5 gave us that opportunity, quite frankly, but again, that's 15 years ago. So you have to keep educating and talking about the importance and how to go about this. And you have a National Labor Relations Board for private sector unionizing. You have a state employee relation board for the public sector organizing. And unfortunately, at the National Labor Relations Board, under this current president, we've lost a lot of that was there. The National Labor Relations Board was put in place to protect workers, and we've lost that mission there, unfortunately, under this president. Organizing continues both in the public and private sector. Again, the work has changed greatly, and organizers are looking for new ways and new opportunities to find workers who want to unionize. And we always say the best organizers are bad employers. So, there's good employers out there and there's bad employers out there, but a lot of organizing is happening. And the challenge is to get to that first contract. And that's where we need labor law reform. So workers who rightly form and join a union and have it voted in, that they're not delayed getting that first contract. And we're really excited about opportunities for growth in the trade union movement.
Tim Berga, president of the Ohio AFL-CIO, ohioaflcio.org is a website talking about the rich labor history in the state of Ohio. Very, very rich. Great job, Tim. You take care. Stay safe. We'll talk to you next month, okay?
Thank you.
And that'll be it for another edition of America's Workforce. Tomorrow, the president of the bricklayers and allied craft workers. Until then, all of you have a safe and wonderful day.
That concludes another episode of the America's Workforce Radio Podcast. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. America's Workforce is a production of Labor Tools and BMA Media Group. Find out more information online at labortools.com.